Alternate histories are usually considered to be a subgenre of science fiction, and it's what you get when history has been minding its own business just the same as ours until there's some point of divergence, something that causes things to develop differently than our history books would have it. An important figure with a different fate, a key event with a different outcome, an external event that causes a dramatic change, and even time travel sometimes gets a look in here. I've scoured the science fiction archives to find some really great examples of this interesting corner of our favourite genre. First up, let's look at two books that consider how things might have turned out if the Reformation didn't happen. We'll start strong with what's often considered to be the daddy of all alternate histories, Pavane by Keith Roberts. The point of divergence in this case is the assassination of Queen Elizabeth I, paving the way for the Spanish Armada to this time successfully invade and conquer England. In one fell swoop, Protestantism is eradicated and the Catholic Church becomes the supreme political and spiritual authority across Europe and subsequently the New World and Australasia too. Never enthusiastic cheerleaders for progress, the Catholic Church has stifled innovation. Even by the 20th century, when the book is set, the Church has maintained a feudal system with technology limited to steam-powered machinery and semaphore telegraphy. Society remains rigidly hierarchical and resistant to progress. Pavane consists of 6 interconnecting stories, each following different characters: a steam haulier, a semaphore operator, a fisher girl, a disillusioned monk, an aristocrat and a rebel, all shaped by the oppressive rule of the Church. By the mid-20th century, whispers of rebellion are spreading, with characters questioning the Church's control and struggling against its oppressive rule. Like Pavane, the Alteration by Kingsley is set in a world where the Protestant Reformation never happened, with Martin Luther selling out and becoming a Catholic Pope. In this world, England remains a Catholic theocracy, ruled by an all-powerful convocation of senior clergy, and is part of a papal-controlled Europe. King Stephen III of England has just died and his funeral is underway, attended by the great and the good of European royalty and the Catholic Church. A gifted 10-year-old chorister, Hubert Anvil, is chosen for castration to preserve his angelic singing voice, a fate, an alteration, he struggles to escape. His personal ordeal serves as a critique of religious control over human autonomy, and Amos uses the funeral to introduce us to the altered world via the naming and descriptions of the cathedral and the attending royalty, eventually revealing that despite all appearances to the contrary, we're in 1976. Scientific and technological progress is strictly limited by the Church. Science is literally a dirty word, and electricity is banned, with society relying on steam engines, airships, and oddly enough, high-speed trains. As is the way with these things, history has run a different course in this book. England dominates what is now known as the English Isles, and the Republic of New England is a breakaway Protestant state in the eastern part of what is now the USA, offering an alternative to Catholic rule. However, the Republic is also depicted as flawed, with racial apartheid and severe punishments in place. Back in England, under the Catholic Church's writ, literature, music and philosophy are subordinated to religious ideology, and even Shakespeare is suppressed as a subversive. In this book, the Catholic world is locked in a long-standing struggle with the Ottoman Empire, with periodic wars used as an alternative method of population control. Pope John XXIV is a ruthless strategist and exploits this conflict for political ends. In a knowing reference to another alternate history that we'll come to later, The Alteration has its own in-universe alternate history book, a work of samizdat dissident literature, The Man in the High Castle by a certain Mr. Philip K. Dick, which imagines a counterfactual world where the Protestant Reformation did succeed, albeit differing in the details from our own history. The Alteration is a warning, should it still be needed, about the dangers of authoritarian rule. That's quite enough about the Reformation. What if the Black Death were even more lethal than it was? European colonisation and later wars don't happen, but what takes its place? In The Years of Rice and Salt, Kim Stanley Robinson imagines just such a world. The Black Death in his book wipes out 99% of Europe's population, leading to a very different global history, dominated instead by Islamic, Chinese and Indian civilizations. For continuity's sake, a central group of characters is reincarnated across different eras, retaining their spiritual kinship and evolving through history, philosophy and science, giving us a front row seat at the alternate history show. Major historical events include a prolonged war between Muslim and Chinese empires, indigenous resistance in the Americas, and a scientific rise of Travancore, a rebellious state in the south of India. The Years of Rice and Salt explores the development of science and social thought, from alchemical experiments in Samarkand to an alternate atomic age in the Islamic world. The story moves through India, China, the Middle East, North America and beyond, depicting alternate political and social movements shaped by non-Western civilizations. Robinson tackles themes of revolution, feminism, democracy and societal transformation play key roles in the book, particularly in later sections as the societies move towards more progressive structures. Despite the war and all the turmoil, the novel suggests a gradual improvement of human society, emphasising resilience, learning and the long arc of history, bending towards progress. Along similar lines, with The Gate of Worlds, Robert Silverberg imagines a world where the Black Death kills a slightly less catastrophic 3/4 of Europe's population, but still enough to prevent European nations from developing and leading to a vastly different geopolitical landscape. With Europe weakened, the Ottoman Empire conquers vast territories, taking Constantinople in 1420, Vienna in 1440, Paris in 1460, and the British Isles in 1490. In this alternate timeline, William Shakespeare still exists, but writes his plays in Turkish, reflecting England's Muslim rulers. The decadent Ottomans didn't have it all their own way, though. They were ultimately expelled from England in the early 20th century. Without European expansion, the Americas, referred to as the Hesperides, remained largely independent, with the Aztecs and the Incas both thriving. But that's kind of all background music. The story follows 18-year-old Dan Beauchamp, who leaves an impoverished England in 1967 to seek his fortune in the Aztec Empire. He's accompanied on his journey by an Aztec sorcerer named Quequex, and together they explore the unfamiliar culture and power structures of this alternate world. What would history look like if the computer was invented 100 or 150 years earlier than it was, or a new source of unlimited power that can fuel a new industrial revolution? As luck would have it, those things both happen, and a very different Great Britain emerges in both of these books. As befits a story by two of the giants of cyberpunk, in The Difference Engine, William Gibson and Bruce Sterling imagine a world where Charles Babbage successfully develops mechanical computers in the early 19th century, triggering a technological revolution. The Industrial Radical Party, led by a surviving Lord Byron, rises to power, overthrowing the Tory government, suppressing the Luddites and elevating scientists and engineers to positions of influence. By 1855, Britain has developed an information-driven society with mass-produced computers, steam-powered vehicles, and a new class of programmers called clackers. Sneaky British interference prevents American unification, leading to multiple successor states, including the Confederate States, the Republic of Texas, the Republic of California, and even a communist Manhattan. The story follows Sybil Gerard, daughter of an executed Luddite, Edward Mallory, an explorer, and Lawrence Oliphant, outwardly a travel writer, but that's really just a cover for his spying. The three are linked in pursuit of a set of computer punch cards, believed to be a gambling tool promising certain wins, but actually containing something else entirely. There's a good deal of spying, there are riots and political betrayals, culminating in the downfall of a corrupt politician, and Sybil Gerard's personal revenge against him. We end with a jump to an alternate 1991, where a vast computer system achieves self-awareness, hinting at the long-term consequences of computers and their development. In Anti-Ice by Stephen Baxter, meteorites from a comet have deposited a mysterious substance that comes to be known as anti-ice in Antarctica. Discovered by Josiah Traveller, this volatile antimatter releases immense energy when it's heated, totally revolutionising technology. Anti-Ice enables giant landliners, near-limitless energy sources, and even space travel, bringing a Jules Verne-style steampunk aesthetic to the 19th century. Having discovered it, Britain monopolises anti-ice, of course it does, escalating tensions with France and Prussia, paralleling real-world nuclear proliferation concerns. The story opens with the use of an anti-ice bomb in battle during the Crimean War, showcasing its devastating potential and setting the stage for a global power struggle. The protagonist is Ned Vickers, a young British diplomat who gets entangled in spying, romance and scientific intrigue, all whilst navigating the difficulties of a very different Victorian society. Baxter injects a witty, self-deprecating British humour into the story, making it a rare and potentially risky blend of comedy and serious speculative science fiction. In science fiction, sometimes weird shit just happens, and it can be that drives the point of divergence. And in my humble opinion, the next two books definitely meet the weird shit criteria. There are plenty of books that cover different outcomes of the US Civil War, but this one is a bit different. In The Guns of the South by Harry Turtledove, slightly randomly, members of the 20th century Afrikaner resistance movement, the AWB, travel back to 1864, intent on arming the Confederacy with modern weapons and other technology to change the outcome of the Civil War. I did say it was weird. With superior weaponry and intel, Lee's forces repel Grant, capture Washington, D.C. and force Lincoln to surrender, leading to Confederate independence. Witnessing the bravery of black Union soldiers and realising slavery's impracticality, Lee grows opposed to the institution, angering his sponsors, the AWB. Lee, running on a pro-abolition platform, narrowly defeats an AWB-backed candidate to become the president of the Confederacy. This puts a target on Lee's back, and the AWB grow even more militant, leading to confrontations and infighting, which threaten the time machine, the Afrikaners' only way to go home. Can Lee prevail and pass his desired emancipation bill, and can the South maintain its newfound strength? Missile Gap by Charles Stross is a novella that does a lot of heavy alternate history lifting. In this book, on the 2nd of October 1962, the universe underwent something of a change. Instantly, the continents of the Earth are no longer wrapped onto a spherical planet, but were instead laid out on the surface of a so-called Alderson disk, a fantastically large megastructure along the lines of Ringworld or a Dyson sphere. Not only have we swapped homes, but we're also in a different galaxy, 800,000 years in the future. Scientists speculate that humanity was either physically transported or possibly reconstructed from a snapshot or placed in a simulated reality by an unknown and godlike intelligence. The physics of the Alderson disk eliminates satellite orbits, rendering ICBMs useless, leading to the collapse of nuclear deterrence and Soviet dominance in Europe. With new continents to explore and no traditional nuclear stalemate, the US and the USSR scramble to expand their influence in this altered world. The superpowers send out expeditions, nuclear-powered ekranoplanes and ocean liners into uncharted territories on this vast disk filled with strange and potentially artificial ecosystems. Ruins of other Earth-like cities destroyed by nuclear war suggest that something like humanity's displacement has happened before. Intelligent termites, yes, really, posing as human agents, orchestrate tensions to push humanity towards nuclear self-destruction, clearing the way for their own species. The implied repetition of this apocalyptic cycle hints at a vast, incomprehensible intelligence shaping human destiny for reasons unknown. Like I said, weird shit. Before we look at some more books, what's your favourite alternate history? Do any of the books that I'm covering here appeal to you? Is there one that I haven't covered that you think I should have included? And finally, if you could change one event in history, what would it be? Drop your thoughts in the comments down below. Talking of changing history, what are some key moments in history that might result in a sliding doors moment that sends ripples through the following decades or even centuries? The next group of books imagine just such a moment. The Alternate History in Aztec Century by Christopher Evans imagines a very different world. Here, Cortes changed sides at the onset of the conquistador era in the early 16th century, leading to the repulsion of the Spanish Empire's invasion and preventing its colonization of Central America. Thus, instead of falling to the Spanish and their diseases, the Aztecs develop unmolested, leading to a technologically advanced, expansionist empire that dominates much of the world by the 20th century. Key historical events diverge, including the Aztecs adopting Christianity and an Anglo-French alliance halting their expansion north in 1815, and the British Empire never rising to its former prominence. How very dare they? The novel begins in the 20th century with the latest in a long line of Aztec conquests. This time it's the turn of Britain to be incorporated into the Aztec Empire, forcing the royal family into exile and reshaping the geopolitical landscape. Much of the world's history is presented through an Aztec lens, offering a distorted but internally consistent version of events, where their imperialism is portrayed as benevolent. The Aztecs maintain their hegemony with advanced weapons, including an orbital laser that decisively ends wars. Evans gives a nuanced portrayal of their rule and its impact on the world. We see it through the eyes of Princess Catherine, the eldest daughter of the British king. Hiding in Wales, Catherine and her sister are betrayed and captured and brought back to a London already dominated by an Aztec pyramid. It's not long before Catherine is involved in clandestine subversion and resistance. As the Aztecs tighten their grip, she's drawn into high politics and intrigue. She witnesses terrorist attacks at home and the horrors of the Russian front, ritual sacrifice and even attacks from space. To complicate matters, she also becomes entangled with the Aztec prince, who's now Britain's governor. And all this because Cortes changed sides. In The Plot Against America, Philip Roth imagines a dark alternate history where Charles Lindbergh, a real-life isolationist, defeats Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1940 on an America First ticket, leading the US away from World War II and into a pro-fascist, anti-Semitic era. Under Lindbergh's administration, anti-Semitism becomes mainstream, with government policies subtly and overtly discriminating against Jewish Americans, forcing them to assimilate or relocate. Roth draws on real-world isolationist sentiments of the early 1940s, imagining an America that aligns with Nazi Germany instead of opposing it, mirroring fascist policies seen in Europe. Told from the perspective of a young Philip Roth, the novel blends personal coming-of-age struggles with the broader national descent into authoritarianism. Government propaganda reframes events to justify oppression, whilst anti-Semitic riots and state-endorsed persecution escalate without significant public resistance. Some do fight against Lindbergh's regime, although often at great personal cost. Lindbergh's sudden disappearance, rumours of Nazi control over his presidency, and the Jewish conspiracy theory used to justify even harsher crackdowns highlight the instability of historical truth. The Plot Against America serves as a cautionary tale, illustrating how democratic institutions can be subverted when fear, nationalism, and authoritarian leadership go unchecked. And I shall say no more. Making his second appearance today, Stephen Baxter imagines a world in which the attempt on JFK's life was not successful. This sets in train a major shift in US space policy, with the space shuttle program sacrificed in favour of a crewed mission to Mars. The existing Apollo missions are redirected towards Mars exploration, cutting the number of moon landings and reallocating spacecraft and resources to support a long-duration Mars mission. NASA has to revive the Nerva nuclear rocket program for deep space propulsion, but can engineering difficulties be overcome, and can they get the damn thing off the ground? Baxter imagines that Skylab and Moonlab, a lunar orbit station, become key stepping stones for Mars, whilst Apollo and Soyuz collaborations reshape the US-Soviet space relations. The story follows the personal and professional struggles of Mars mission astronauts, including geologist Natalie York, ambitious test pilots, and a black astronaut seeking historical firsts. The final Ares mission plan relies on modified Saturn V rockets, in-orbit assembly, and a Venus flyby for gravity assist, all of which must go perfectly if the mission is to be successful. Being a proud nerd for the science, Baxter emphasises the technical details, but there's also political manoeuvring and the intense risks of human spaceflight, and he presents a plausible alternative history of a Mars mission that could have been. Some of the most momentous times in history coalesce around a conflict, around a war. And in our next group of science fiction books, we get to see what might happen if a war turned out differently. In Bring the Jubilee, Wardmore contemplates how America would develop if the South won the US Civil War. In this alternate history, Confederate forces win the Battle of Gettysburg and force the US to surrender in 1864, leading to the establishment of an independent Confederate States of America, or CSA. The rump United States becomes impoverished and corrupt and lawless, with limited infrastructure and a stagnant economy. By the mid-20th century, the setting for the book, the CSA has become a world power, allied with Britain, whilst the German Union, a combination of Germany and Austria-Hungary, rivals it, creating a tense geopolitical landscape. Without the northern industrialisation of our history, technology develops differently. Internal combustion engines, airplanes and electric lights never emerge, and instead steam-powered vehicles and dirigibles dominate. Bring the Jubilee is not just an alternate history. The book opens with a conundrum. Hodge Backmaker is writing his life story. He's writing in 1877, but he wasn't born until 1921, strongly implying that there's some timey-wimey shenanigans at some point in the book. Wardmore describes life in 1940s New York beautifully, and we get a really good idea what this backwater town is like via Hodge's indentured employment. Hodge explores how history is shaped by chance, ultimately realising that the Confederacy's victory was not inevitable, but the result of small contingent events. Those timey-wimey chickens do come home to roost towards the end of the book, neatly closing that loop, and one or two other historical issues too. No look at alternate history would be complete without considering The Man in the High Castle by, of course, Philip K. Dick. In this book, the Axis powers won World War II, resulting in a partitioned United States ruled by Imperial Japan in the West and Nazi Germany in the East. The story takes place in 1962 and follows multiple characters, including a Japanese trade official, a secret Jewish artisan, an antique dealer, and a woman seeking the mysterious author of a subversive novel. The titular man in the High Castle is Hawthorne Abendston, the author of The Grasshopper Lies Heavy, a banned novel within the novel that depicts a different alternate reality where the Allies won the war. The world is dominated by a Cold War between Imperial Japan and Nazi Germany, the latter having developed advanced tech, whilst also planning an attack on Japan. Mr. Takomi, a Japanese official in San Francisco, meets a disguised Nazi defector who warns him of Germany's plan to attack Japan in a secret operation called Dandelion. Takomi experiences visions of an alternate reality where the US won the war, suggesting that The Grasshopper Lies Heavy may represent a deeper truth rather than mere fiction. Philip K. Dick questions the nature of reality itself, suggesting that history and truth are fluid and shaped by perception. I hope you enjoyed that video, and as always, thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye for now.